Get 3 coffins ready.
Just crossed over into the Twilight Zone.
The second half of the story is where things start to get a little bit dark. But before things get too dark, let's talk about main character number 2 in this story. And that's Henry Heath. Henry Heath was born in England on November 22nd, 1828. Like Moroni, Henry's family were part of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Henry's family wanted to go where the church was, and at the time, it was in Nauvoo, Illinois. There they were persecuted for their beliefs, and like Moroni's family, they decided to venture to Utah. Before making their trek to Utah, Henry's father passed away. While on their trek to Utah, they arrived at winter quarters. While there, Henry's mother, Barbara, died, October 20th, 1846, from either scurvy or malaria, and was buried in an unmarked grave. Henry departed winter quarters June 19th and entered the Salt Lake Valley on October 1st, 1847. Henry Heath married Sarah Ann Bird on February 19th, 1851. Henry and Sarah had 12 children born from 1852 to 1878. The oldest, Sarah Melissa, died in April 1861. Now that's going to be important in a later part of the story. Now this is when our 2 characters first cross paths. A 27-year-old Moroni had been shot dead along with his friend John Smith by police while allegedly trying to escape. Also dead was Lot Huntington, and all 3 were buried in Salt Lake City Cemetery. Moroni in the Potter's Field, since no one claimed the body. Henry Heath, seeing that Moroni had no family to claim him, decided to buy Moroni burial clothes and was there to see him put in the earth. Now, if you remember a little bit earlier, we talked about how Moroni and his brother George were close, and so you may be wondering why nobody was there to claim the body. See, at the time that Moroni had been killed, George had been out west of Salt Lake building mail stations. When George returned, he was told about what had happened. He was angry that Moroni had been buried in the Potter's Field and sought permission to move the body, either to be buried by his mother at the same cemetery or to be taken to the Willow Creek Cemetery, which was, like we said, in Draper area. He was reburied in Willow Creek. When George disinterred his brother, he found Moroni's body naked and lying face down. Later, Henry Heath would visit Willow Creek and was verbally attacked by George for the condition he found the body. Henry had finally convinced George that his brother was buried fully clothed. In fact, Henry had purchased burial clothes for him out of his own pocket. Upon Henry Heath's return to Salt Lake, Heath soon confided in probate judge Elias Smith, who ordered him to take a look into the matter. He personally led an investigation into the burial. Henry, with George and a few others, knocked on Sexton Jesse C. Little's door to inquire if he knew of what may have happened to Moroni's body. After a brief conversation, the sexton told them to go talk to a man named Jean Baptiste, our 3rd character. See, Jean Baptiste was the gravedigger for the cemetery, so if anybody would know anything, it would be him. From there, Officer Heath, George Clausen, and 2 other men traveled to Baptiste's home on 3rd Avenue between P and R streets. As they knocked on the door, they were greeted by Baptiste's wife, Dorothy. She quickly invited them in. While inside, they couldn't help but notice several boxes stacked inside the house. One of the men couldn't help themselves and opened one of the boxes to find dirty clothes. There were numerous boxes of clothing stacked around, Heath had recalled in an 1893 interview with Deseret News. Imagine our shock and surprise when we discovered that these were funeral robes for people buried in the city cemetery for several years past. Now Dorothy was confused at what was happening. Dorothy then told the group that Jean was out digging a grave. Henry Heath's mind was going all over the place. But thoughts of Moroni began to fade, as Henry had buried a daughter in this very graveyard only a year ago. Now, who was this guy Baptiste? What do we know about where he comes from? This is part of the story that not a lot of people know.
But what does that mean?
It means your future hasn't been written yet. No one's has. Your future is whatever you make it. So make it a good one. Both of you.